In this episode of PulsePoint, we'll update you on these topics: the disastrous opening of the Olympic Games 2024 mocking the Last Supper, an independent review show restricting puberty blockers doesn't lead to suicide, Switzerland to use first suicide pod for assisted dying, who is JD Vance, will Barbie dolls save babies from abortion, and finally, grieving the victim of the attempted Trump assassination. Welcome to PulsePoint, the latest media stories and research related to family and society that you need to know about. It's time to cut through the spin and uncover the real issues. I'm Tambi Stowers. The opening of the Olympic Games is usually a family affair. This time it was France's turn, and it was held in Paris, and I believe the Olympic Committee has failed this year. From a golden calf to death riding a pale horse, to a beheaded lady singing, to something that looked like the Grim Reaper taking children through a dark tunnel, many people call this grooming. And finally, the blatant mockery of Christ's Last Supper. Now, Thomas Joly, the ceremony's artistic director, has pushed back against criticism, claiming the mock-up of a famous Christianity image is all about inclusivity. In France, people are free to love how they please, are free to love whoever they want, are free to believe or not believe, Joly said. He said he just wanted everyone to feel represented. Of course, except Christians in this case. The response has been significant. Broadcaster Piers Morgan said, "By the way, what the F was all this about? A drag queen mockery of the Last Supper at the Olympics. Would they have mocked any other religion like this? Appalling decision." Speakers of the House in the US, Mike Johnson, said, "Last night's mockery of the Last Supper was shocking and insulting to Christian people all around the world who watched the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games. The war on our faith and traditional values knows no bounds today, but we know that truth and virtue will always prevail. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." Dutch politician Geert Wilders, who in 2009 was charged by a Dutch court with inciting hatred towards Muslims and acquitted 2.5 years later, said, "So mocking Christianity is okay, but when I publish some Muhammad cartoons, the left cries blasphemy and radical imams issues fatwas, double standards of the worst kind." Interestingly, it resulted in large outdoor church services in Paris. And because of the world response, the Olympic Committee was forced to rightly apologize.
It was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group. If people have taken any offense, we are, of course, really, really sorry.
The BBC has reported that an independent review has debunked claims that restricting puberty blockers at a London gender identity clinic led to an increase in suicides among young patients. Dr. Louis Appleby, who is a professor of psychiatry and experienced suicide researcher from the University of Manchester, was asked by Health Secretary Wes Streeting to examine the data following claims made by campaigners of a rise in suicide rates since puberty-blocking drugs were restricted at the Tavistock and Portman NHS Trust in 2020. Professor Appleby's review concludes the data does not support the claim, and he added the way the issue had been discussed on social media was insensitive, distressing, and dangerous. He said, "One risk is that young people and their families will be terrified by predictions of suicide as inevitable without puberty blockers." One of the key weapons used by trans activists is to claim that if young people are not given puberty blockers, they'll commit suicide. We note that the recent Cass report destroyed that suicide trope, better a live son than a dead daughter, which is used to manipulate parents, as did recent studies from Sweden and Finland. And now this one. When you hear the suicide claim made by activists as justification for chemicalization and confusing young people, don't accept it. It has no credibility. In fact, the opposite may be true. we should give confused young people the counseling and healing of the mind that they need. Switzerland is preparing to use the Sarco, a portable suicide pod that allows individuals to die without medical supervision. Dubbed as a Tesla of assisted suicide, the futuristic-looking 3D printed capsule was first unveiled in 2019 in Switzerland amid controversy. It fills its chamber with nitrogen and rapidly reduces oxygen levels once a button is activated from the inside. Developed by Philip Nishke of Exit International, nicknamed Dr. Death, this device has come under fire for glamorizing suicide with calls for a ban, with opponents of it referring to Article 115 of the Swiss Criminal Code, which says that assisted suicide is a crime if done for selfish reasons. Now, legal challenges and ethical concerns persist, with opponents citing potential misuse and legal repercussions under Swiss law. Our Euthanasia and Assisted Dying Law, the End-of-Life Choice Act 2019, is currently undergoing a review where the public will have a chance to give their opinion on changes to the act. Ohio Senator JD Vance has been announced as the running mate for Donald Trump at the upcoming presidential election. He's only been in the Senate since 2022. Now, is he a friend or a foe of social conservatives? According to the Family Research Council, they congratulated Vance, noting that Senator Vance was one of only 5 senators who received a perfect score on FRC Action's scorecard for votes taken in 2023. That's a scorecard similar to our Value Your Vote. Sadly, he recently said he supported the pill mifepristone that enables early medical abortions. However, you can always judge the policies and character of a person by seeing who hates them. Planned Parenthood Action labeled Vance as an unqualified anti-abortion politician who won't protect any of your rights. On the issue of children being transgender, Vance has opposed experimental transgender medical interventions for minors. Last July, Vance introduced the Senate version of the Protect Children's Innocent Act to make interventions such as puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and transgender surgeries as felony when performed on minors. Vance also said, "I'll stop calling people groomers when they stop freaking out about bills that prevent the sexualization of my children." Now, he strongly opposes sexuality and gender indoctrination in schools and is opposed to passports having a category for non-male or female. Now, following the Ohio vote, which legalized recreational marijuana in his state, Vance told Politico that he's not a fan of recreational marijuana. He argued that legalization increases youth use and traffic fatalities. Finally, on his faith, Vance has admitted that his Christian faith has grown in recent years.
I think that Christianity, broadly speaking, answered important questions about character and virtue that my elite educational credentials were not answering for me. I think that at Yale Law School, where I went to law school, it was all about get the best degree, go to the best school, get the best job. And these things weren't making me a good person, but Christianity was asking me to ask much more important questions, like how do you treat this girl that you've fallen in love with, the girl that I eventually married? How do you be a good person? How do you eventually become a good father? That to me was a fundamentally Christian worldview, and so that led me back to Christianity writ large.
On his Twitter account, it says, "Christian husband, dad, U.S. Senator for Ohio." Now, JD Vance appears to be a supporter for the value that you and I care about. You can read and watch more about his views on the latest edition of MacBlog. Earlier this week, Mattel, the multinational toy manufacturing company established in 1945, announced the release of 2 new dolls, a blind Barbie and a Barbie doll with Down syndrome. Part of his Fashionistas line, the creations are intended to help dispel myths and connect with children living with disabilities. Now, Krista Berger, Senior Vice President of Barbie and Global Head of Dolls, says, "We recognize that Barbie is much more than just a doll. She represents self-expression and can create a sense of belonging," she said. "We proudly introduce a new blind Barbie doll and a black doll with Down syndrome to our Barbie Fashionistas line, reinforcing our commitment to creating products that represent global belonging and inclusivity in the doll aisles." Now, sadly, in New Zealand, abortion law and screening facilities can lead to abortions for disabilities, including Down syndrome babies right through to birth. On one hand, the statement from the Barbie officials has all the markings of modern-day corporate speak, but could the company's decision to release these particular dolls wind up saving innocent preborn lives? And finally, Corey Comparator tragically lost his life shielding his wife and daughters from a bullet aimed at former President Trump during a rally in Pennsylvania. Remembered as a devoted family man, dedicated engineer, volunteer firefighter, and community leader, Corey's daughter Allison described him as a real-life superhero for his sacrificial act. In his obituary, she described him as a man of God who loved Jesus fiercely and also looked after our church and our members as family. His death has devastated his family and community. Yet his bravery and selfless act to protect his family reminds us that healthy masculinity, emphasizing protection and selflessness, protects the family and the greater good of communities and society. May his bravery and selfless act of love encourage men to lean into their God-given roles as protectors and providers. And that's the latest episode of PulsePoint. You can check out all these stories and more on our website, familyfirst.nz. We'll keep watching the news so that you don't have to. See you next time.